Trump's attorney Alina Habba went on Newsmax to try to defend her major losses that she and Donald Trump took in court, particularly pertaining to the civil fraud case in New York, and it went about just as embarrassingly as you might have expected. Take a look.
What are your grounds on appeal here?
What are my grounds on appeal is a better question. Where do you begin? I mean, we could start with all the things we talked about, Rob, over the past 6 months on these cases, in this case in particular. We saw a completely bipartisan situation become absolutely toxic and un-American. Gag orders placed on attorneys where we couldn't put things on the record. I still have that gag order in place. So does the president. The judge here ignored the statute of limitations limitation that was put in place by the appellate division that reversed him. There are witnesses, everyone who said there was nothing done wrong, including Deutsche Bank, including Zurich, who still works with the Trump organization.
I'm Ravana, and welcome back to Rebel HQ. Despite saying this,
what are my grounds on appeal is a better question. Where do you begin?
Not a single thing Trump's bumbling attorney Alina Habba said in that interview would actually be appropriate legal grounds for an appeal. She says, we saw a completely bipartisan situation become absolutely toxic. Now, I went to law school. I do have a law degree, and at no point do I remember learning that you can appeal a court decision based on toxicity, perceived toxicity, a lack of bipartisanship, which I don't even know what that's supposed to mean in the context of this court case of Donald Trump's civil fraud trial. She then goes on to say that she and Donald Trump were placed under an unfair gag order that prevented them from putting things in the record, which is completely and utterly a lie. The gag order that they were placed under was to prevent them from making disparaging statements about the judge's law clerk. And that has nothing to do with the facts of the trial. They were just slandering this poor law clerk. And as a result, the law clerk was becoming the victim of harassment. It is a completely reasonable step for a judge to try to protect their staff while overseeing a case. Nothing about that was out of the ordinary. In fact, the only bizarre thing there was allowing your client to attack both the judge and their clerks and engaging in that same sort of behavior yourself. As a licensed attorney, you should be so utterly embarrassed. And her last ridiculous argument is that Deutsche Bank, a bank known for engaging in honest behavior, said that there was nothing wrong, and as evidence that clearly there was no fraud, they're still doing work with Donald Trump. They're still engaging in business with him and his companies. However, they weren't the only witnesses to these crimes that testified and provided evidence, and the judge, in evaluation of all of the clear and compelling evidence that Donald Trump, his sons, and his business entities engaged in fraud, was significantly more compelling than whatever testimony was provided by Deutsche Bank to prove the opposite, which he was well within his right as the judge, as the sole decision maker in this case, to come to that conclusion. And that pretty much sums up why Donald Trump is going to go with a different attorney to file his appeal. Alina Habba simply doesn't know what the hell she's doing. But the facts here are the reason she couldn't clearly state what his grounds for appeal are is that there really are none. And apparently the Newsmax host noticed she was struggling to put forward a clear argument and quickly pivoted the subject to New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Letitia James is not going to get away with this. The Biden administration is not going to get away with it. What would you say to Letitia James if you ran into her on the street and you weren't a lawyer in this case?
I wasn't a lawyer in this case. I was a normal person.
Yep. You're just Alina Habba.
I can't say that on national television. I would honestly, at this point, she's in so deep. Her press conference says it all. I would tell her what to show me that no one is above the law and start applying the law to her own. That's what I would say, because it's very clear her animus, her chip on her shoulder, her political motivation is ruining our country, much like a lot of DAs and AGs. And I would tell her, why don't you have some dignity for your role as the Attorney General in New York and start taking care of your state?
First of all, very becoming of you, Alina Habba, as a licensed attorney, admitting that if you saw Letitia James on the street and you were not Trump's attorney, that your behavior would be completely uncouth and so inappropriate you couldn't even mention what it would be on Newsmax. Second of all, to claim that it's her that is undignified when you are representing a bigot, a fraudster, a sexual predator, is rich. And then she says potentially the most hypocritical and ironic thing she could say in that moment, which is that the Attorney General of New York needs to treat the law as though nobody is above the law, which incidentally is exactly what she did when she filed these charges against a former president of the United States. And again, ironically, that Donald Trump should be above the law is the legal argument that his legal team is presenting in all of the criminal cases that he's facing. They genuinely believe, and Alina Habba also genuinely believes, that Donald Trump should not be held to the same standard as ordinary Americans, that he should be held to a lower standard because he was the president of the United States. So for her to say that just shows what a complete lack of self-awareness that absolute clown has. And by representing Donald Trump, Alina Habba has ruined all of her chances at having a normal, successful legal career after she gets fired, which inevitably, because of her poor performance and results, she will be. But when that happens, she will be getting exactly what she deserves.